presentation. So I will try today to give you a short presentation on the work that is being done and continues to be done in 3GPP actually on network capability exposure. So basically enabling how to enable operators to open new revenue streams, to monetize the network capabilities to external applications, and also by this bridging the gap between the application developers communities and mobile network players, operators, vendors, and so on. Okay, so the agenda of this presentation will be as follows. We will start with a short introduction, then I will focus on presenting and explaining the frameworks defined by 3GPP for network capability exposure, starting with what we call 3GPP northbound APIs, and then 3GPP application enabler layer frameworks and APIs. Then I will make a short comparison between the work done in 3GPP and also what is being done in Camera and GSMA Open Gateway, which are both addressing the same issues and trying to reach the same goals, more or less. Then a short overview of the CAPIF enabler layer that is also defined by 3GPP. And we will conclude with a short overview of the ongoing and future work in 3GPP on these network capability exposure frameworks, followed by a conclusion. So let's start our journey. So first of all, the 3GPP and API story started from release from 5G actually, where the 3GPP decided to define a service-based 5G core network that is based on what we call a RESTful design and articulated around stateless network functions that exchange information with each other to fulfill the requests from the subscribers based on modular service APIs. So 3GPP has been defining APIs since the introduction of 5G, but actually 3GPP has also introduced APIs specifically for network capability exposure since 4G already. So for exposing network capabilities, APIs are defined by 3GPP since 4G. Okay, so you have a picture here of the 5G core network, something that maybe several people already know. So let's now move to network capability exposure, which is basically a framework that enables network operators to expose the capabilities of the network. So location information of UEs, you can have also several network related events that can be reported and so on. We will see the details later. To external applications that could make use of these capabilities. So this is achieved either using what we call 3GPP northbound framework or the 3GPP application enabler layer framework. So for the 3GPP northbound framework, it's basically an application function, so the application developer that is triggering what we call some edge network function that is called the NEF, network exposure function. We have heard some details about it, and there is an interesting demo about the NEF and CAPIF that is really very interesting. And so this application can trigger the NEF, and the NEF will translate the request into a southbound request towards the 5G core network functions. And the other alternative to achieve network capability exposure defined by 3GPP, and I would like to insist on that, is the application enabler layer framework, which is basically defining an abstraction layer in between the application developers and application function layer and the 3GPP or the mobile core network or mobile network of the operator. And this abstraction layer is basically doing a kind of translation and transformation of the requests from the applications into requests that can be understandable by the network. Okay, so basically requests to the NEF or directly to the network functions. We'll see more details after in the following slides. So now let's focus on the 3GPP northbound framework. So it's basically, as I said, enabling external application to make use of network capabilities. So as you can see, you have the application developers layer, so the application functions. So an application that is sitting on an application server or function that wants to, for a specific use case, make use of the network capabilities exposed by the network, so a network deployed by an operator, basically. So for that, it will send requests to what we call the NEF, the network exposure function in 5G, and we have a function, a similar function in 4G that is called the SCEF, so the service capability exposure function, that can be used also for exposure of 4G. So the application function will send requests to what we call 3GPP northbound APIs that are developed by 3GPP for the NEF, and those APIs actually enable you to achieve several use cases. There are several families of these northbound APIs. You have what, as I said, network events exposure, so exposing several types of events like location information is the main example. You can have also the roaming status, whether a UE is roaming or not, and many other examples. You have the possibility to influence the network traffic routing and also the quality of service in the network. You have also several set of APIs that enables you to enables the network to expose network analytics and manage them towards external applications. You have the possibility to provision service or application-related parameters to the network for various services like V2X or any other service. You have service-related frameworks like multicast and broadcast to be able to establish and manage a multicast or broadcast session, and many other examples. You can check for that the following 3GPP specs that are provided here. So the main, the strength of the NEF and this northbound framework is that it enables to expose network capabilities in a secure way. So it acts as a kind of topology hiding entity for the 5G core network and enables to securely and easily expose the network capabilities to external applications. Okay. Now let's move to the application enabler layer framework. So this has also been introduced in 3GPP for several years. So more or less in parallel to the northbound APIs, it started with the CAPIF and some other frameworks like SEAL, but it is being developed and gaining more traction in 3GPP and also in other industry bodies. So for application layer frameworks, the principle is very simple. So instead of triggering directly the APIs exposed by the network, so the NEF APIs or the ONM APIs, you create a kind of abstraction layer that will act as a translation function of the request from the application. So basically enable applications to make simple requests instead of providing, for example, the exact quality of service parameters that can be complicated for an application developer. You can provide some higher level requirements, like I want the latency to be less than this, and then this translates to specific quality of service parameters from this abstraction layer towards the network. So it's basically doing a kind of transformation in order to enable and facilitate the usage of the network to external applications. Okay, so we have several types of these application enabler layer frameworks. There are there are frameworks that are specific to an application, like for example edge computing, UAS, unmanned aerial systems, V2X, so vehicle-related applications. We have frameworks to achieve specific use cases related to these services, or we have some frameworks like SEAL that are common for any vertical application. So it provides a set of functionalities like location management, group management, configuration management, network resources management that can be used by any type of vertical application. Okay. Okay, so now that we have seen these two important frameworks, let's have a look at the evolution of all these functionalities in 3GPP. So as I said, this started in 4G, and it is a continuous work all the way to 5G Advanced that we are developing currently in 3GPP. So as you can see, the functionalities are growing. We are supporting more and more fancy functionalities. For example, in 5G Advanced Release 19, we are working on ambient IoT support. We are working on this metaverse, AI, machine learning as well, integration into 3GPP networks, so the possibility to use 3GPP network for AI and ML related or metaverse related applications. And also we are at the same time enhancing the existing capabilities like CAPIF, like edge applications, working also with other industry bodies like ETSI MEC and also the GSMA and so on to enhance the capabilities and make them more suitable for the needs and use cases that are being developed in the industry. Okay. And just one last word on this slide is that the fact that this has been developed in a smooth and continuous way from 4G all the way to 5G enables actually that the application does not need to worry about the underlying network. I mean, whether it is 4G, 5G, or 5G advanced, it doesn't really matter. Only the supported functionality matters, because whether you want to expose events from 4G or 5G or 5G advanced, it's basically the same platform that is used, because for example, the NEF uses many SCEF APIs. So the SCEF is the 4G function. Okay. Now, a short comparison between actually this work that is being done in 3GPP on network capability exposure and the work being done in camera and GSMA Open Gateway. Well, actually, for us, it's basically it's more or less the same thing. So both are trying to achieve the same goal, which is making network capability exposure attractive and more attractive to the application developers community. The approach is obviously a little bit different, but the goal is the same. And we can see that here using these two figures. So on the left-hand side, you have the 3GPP network capability exposure frameworks. And on the right-hand side, you have the figure of the camera and GSMA structure and base functioning. So here you can see that the application layer is I mean, the correspondence is, you can see it here. Then for the abstraction layer, the correspondence is also can be seen here. So the GSMA transformation function and all these camera service APIs correspond more or less to what we define as application enabler layer APIs in 3GPP. And obviously the network APIs are the same. So here the camera has broader scope. You can trigger many other types of APIs. 3GPP, of course, focuses on the network APIs, so triggering the 5G core network or the O&M system. Okay, so more or less, as I said, the 3GPP enabler layer APIs are the same as the camera service APIs. And recently, there have been some discussions between 3GPP and GSMA camera, which is good, because this will increase and enhance the partnership between the two on developing these frameworks that can be useful for, at the end of the day, for the industry and to be able for operators to monetize their network to external applications. Okay. Okay, now just a few words on CAPIF. There will be more detailed presentations on CAPIF with the Open CAPIF SDG that is defining and working on an open source specification of CAPIF. So CAPIF is actually it's an enabler layer as well, defined by 3GPP, but it's something that can be used. It's a layer that can be used by any application enabler layer or any northbound API, and also any set of APIs defined by any other industry body or initiative. So it is basically taking care of all the common functionalities. So the publishing the APIs that are supported, being able to discover the APIs, being able to perform authorization and security, routing, auditing, login, and so on, to enable charging and so on. So CAPIF is basically, so here I'm not going into the details of the structure, but you have an API invoker that can be, for example, an application function in the example of the northbound APIs. And in order to trigger a service API that is exposed by the NEF here in this example, this API invoker will need to interact with the CAPIF core function, and also the NEF will have to interact with the CAPIF core function to make all this happen. So the NEF will publish the APIs, the API invoker will discover the API, then request for authorization information, and then after that being able to trigger the service APIs. And then after that, the NEF can collect also the logs from the CCF on how many API invocations to enable, for example, charging. Okay, and this is, as I said, being developed by ETSI Open CAPIF, so the presentation, there will be a presentation on this later on. So I will skip this slide. It's just repeating what I have just said about the ongoing activities to develop these network capability exposure frameworks in 3GPP. And go directly to the conclusion. So just to conclude quickly, I'm a little bit exceeding the time, sorry for that. 3GPP is actually actively working on defining unified network capability exposure APIs with the objective to have extensible frameworks to enable operators to make use of their network capabilities and be able to monetize them. So there are several models, several approaches. Either you can trigger the northbound APIs directly, as you can see in this model, or you can have an abstraction layer, either using application enabler layer frameworks defined by 3GPP or the ones defined by Camera, GSMA, Open Gateway, or any other initiative. But the whole objective of all these frameworks is the same, is to enable operators to monetize their network, which will be key in 5G Advanced and also in 6G, because the classical revenue streams for operators are not anymore enough. So we need to work together, and this is also joining all the open source initiatives to develop solutions based on this that will also enable to push further all these solutions and see some real deployments of this in reality. So this will conclude my presentation. So I stop here, and thanks a lot for your attention. So
thank you.